Thank you for joining me at Tantrum House Studio D. I'm Melissa Delp. Learn to surf your way to greatness in this how to play of the perfect wave. The Perfect Wave is a card drafting set collection game for 2 to 4 players that takes 30 to 60 minutes to play. It's designed by Jason Mowry and Chase Williams and published by The Op. The publisher sponsored this How to Play video. I'm going to cover setup, gameplay, and endgame scoring. The video has timestamps to help you navigate to each section. So let's start with the setup. Here's what the game looks like all set up. You'll need room in the middle of the table for the pier board and goals. Each player will need room for their player board with space above to play cards and a little bit of space below for their surfer. Now here's the setup step by step. Give each player a player board, player aid card, 2 wax tokens, and a surfer token. The surfer token is placed under the leftmost space of the player board. Place the pier board in the center of the table. The extra wax tokens can be placed nearby. Now prepare the maneuver deck, the deck with the clouds on the back. Separate the paddle out cards from the trick cards. Based on your player count, you might need to remove some cards. For 2 players, remove 12 paddle out cards and 24 random trick cards. For 3 players, remove 6 paddle out cards and 12 random trick cards. For 4 players, keep all the cards. Next, deal 2 trick cards face down to each player. Then shuffle the trick cards and paddle out cards together to form the maneuver deck. Place it to the left of the pier board, in line with the top row. Shuffle the wave deck, the deck with the water and birds on the back. Deal 2 wave cards face down to each player. Then place the deck next to the pier board under the maneuver cards. Now it's time to shuffle the final deck of cards, the goal cards, with the water and sun on the back. If you want to play a simpler game, skip this step and play without the goal cards. After shuffling, deal 2 cards face down to each player. Then deal 4 cards face up above the pier board. Return the rest of the goal cards to the box. Place the 2 surfboards near the face-up goal cards. At this point in setup, each player should have 2 wave cards, 2 trick cards, and 2 goal cards. Each player should look at their own cards and choose one of their goal cards to keep as a private goal. They return the other one to the box. Now it's time to deal cards from the maneuver and wave decks to the pier board. The maneuvers should be on the top row and the waves on the bottom row. Finally, give the first player standee to the person who has most recently been to the beach. That's all of the setup for the game. Now it's time to talk about gameplay. In the Perfect Wave, you're trying to put together the most impressive sequence of wave cards and tricks to show off your skills and gain victory points. You'll get points for creating a wave that increases, having sets and runs of numbers on your board, successfully performing tricks, and completing goal cards. I'll explain the specifics of those in the scoring section so you'll know why you want to play certain cards in certain spots. This section will just cover the how of the game. The overall game structure is that players take turns. A turn consists of taking actions by spending 2 action points and then performing cleanup on the pier. Players continue taking turns until the last maneuver card is drawn, which triggers the end of the game. At that point, you'll finish out the round so that everyone has taken the same number of turns, and then you'll perform final scoring. You only count cards up to where your surfer has paddled out to. If you have cards farther to the right, you have to discard them before scoring. That was the big picture. So what can you actually do on your turn? Well, you have 2 action points to spend. You can perform 2 different 1-cost actions, the same 1-cost action twice, or just one action that costs 2 action points. The things you can spend action points on and how much they cost are listed on your player aid as a reminder. Several of the actions involve playing cards, and there are a few rules about that, so I want to cover those first before describing all of the actions. When you play a wave card, it goes on one of the empty slots on your board. You play it face down so the other players can't see it. Trick cards go in empty slots above your board and are associated with the wave card beneath it. You also play these face down. At any time, you can look at your face down cards to remind yourself of what you've played. When you play a paddle out card, you discard it and move your surfer one space to the right. The position of your surfer affects where you can play cards. You can only play them above your surfer and to the right. So if your surfer is under the third slot, you cannot play any cards behind it in these slots. But you can play in any of these slots. You don't have to go from left to right. You can skip spaces when you play. At the end of the game, your surfer's position determines which cards you score. You only count cards above your surfer and to the left back toward the beginning. There's a timing aspect to paddling out. It reduces where you can play cards, but increases your scoring area. So, back to the actions you can take. These actions cost 1 action point. You can take 1 card from the pier board, either a wave card or a maneuver card, and immediately play it. Or instead, you can put it into your hand to play later. You can also draw from the top of either deck. Another 1-cost action is playing a card from your hand. If you have wax tokens, you can spend 1 to move your surfer 1 space to the right. Or spend 1 to search the wave discard pile and take a card of your choice. You can either play that card immediately or put it in your hand. Both of those actions, moving the surfer or taking a card from the discard, still cost an action point in addition to spending the wax token. There's one other way to use wax tokens. As a free action, you can spend a wax token to discard the 4 face-up wave cards and deal 4 new ones to the pier board. There are 2 actions that cost 2 action points. If you decide to take one of these actions, it will be your entire turn. You can gain a wax token, or you can activate a public goal. Place one of the surfboard tokens on one of the 4 goals above the board. At the end of the game, only the public goals with surfboards will be scored. After you spend your 2 action points, your turn ends and you perform the end of turn cleanup. For each row of cards on the pier board, if there's a card in the rightmost slot, discard it. Then slide all remaining cards to the right and fill the empty spaces. This movement is reminiscent of the waves washing the cards off the pier. This is the main time when cards are replaced on the board. Don't fill empty spaces during a player's turn. If the wave deck runs out of cards, shuffle the discard and make a new deck. After the board is refilled, it's the next player's turn. You'll keep taking turns until the last maneuver card is drawn. This triggers the end of the game. Shuffle the maneuver card discard to make a new deck, and then finish the current round so that all players have taken the same number of turns. Then you proceed to endgame scoring. After every player has taken their final turn, and before you score anything, each player needs to check the position of their surfer. If you have any cards to the right of your surfer, discard those cards. They don't count. There are 6 ways to gain points: your wave, sets, runs, tricks, and private and public goals, if you're playing with the goal cards. You might want to use paper and pencil or a calculator app to keep track of your score. The first thing you score is your wave. If there isn't a wave card above your surfer, move your surfer to the left until it's under a wave card. Then reveal your wave cards one at a time as your surfer rides the wave back toward the start of the board. If you reach an empty slot, or a wave card that is higher than the one to its right, you've wiped out. Discard any cards in that slot and any others to the left. Once you've stopped your wave, either by reaching the end of your board or wiping out, gain the points at the bottom of your board for each section that has a face-up wave card. This wave is worth 120 points. Now you're going to score your sets and runs. We're just looking at the wave cards again. If you have at least 3 cards in a row that are the same number, you have a set. Compare the number of cards in your set to the chart on your player aid card to determine how many points it's worth. The more cards, the more points. To score runs, you need at least 3 adjacent cards that increase by 1 number. In a run, there can't be a repeated number in the middle or a skipped number. The number on one of the ends of the run can be counted for a run and a set. Your player aid also has a chart for scoring runs. Next, you're going to score the trick cards above your board. Flip all your trick cards face up, then determine if the requirements have been met. Usually, the requirement is based on the wave card beneath it, like above an even number, or based on other trick cards, like combo, which scores if it's next to another combo card. Discard any tricks that did not have its requirements met, and then score points for your completed tricks. The snap tricks score a little differently. The player with the most snap tricks gains a total of 40 points, not 40 points per card. If there is a tie for the most, no one scores points for snap tricks. The final things you need to score are the goal cards, if you've decided to play with them. An overarching rule is that any goals that require a player to have the most, least, highest, or lowest of something will not score if there's a tie for that criteria. During the game, players had the opportunity to activate public goals by placing a surfboard token by them. At the end of the game, only the public goals with surfboards are scored. That could be 0, 1, or 2. For activated public goals, every player who meets the requirements scores the points. Finally, reveal the private goal you chose at the beginning of the game. If you completed its requirements, score the points. Total up all your points from the 6 different scoring opportunities, and whoever has the most points wins. If there's a tie, the player with the highest numbered wave card on their board wins. If there's still a tie, look at the second highest numbered wave card, and so on until the tie is broken. So that's how you play the perfect wave from the op. If you take too long setting up the perfect sequence, you might get caught too close to shore. If you paddle out too early, you might give up valuable points. Can you catch the perfect wave? Thanks for watching this sponsored How to Play video. If it was helpful, please like and subscribe. And let me know in the comments, what's your favorite beach-themed game?